the lighting in here is terrible. I apologize about that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to set up, I have a youth sports portrait session here in about an hour. So I'm gonna set all this stuff up, get everything ready, and then the player will come in, the athlete will come in, I'll do all the shooting. My goal with this video is to take you through the process of the shoot itself. Set up, shoot, tear down. In a separate video, I will take you through my post-shoot workflow when it comes to the camera and the photos themselves, importing them into Lightroom, what I do, how I cull, all that kind of stuff. But this is going to be the process of the shoot itself. So with no further ado, let me get all this stuff set up and then I'll talk to you again. So the space is set up, and you can kind of see how this is going to play out. The athlete will stand here on the tee that I drew, and I could usually, for younger athletes, making a tee makes sense. Is put 1 foot on one side, 1 foot on the other side, and let the line cut your foot in half is usually what I say to them. Key light, fill light, I'll adjust these as needed based on the exposure that I'm looking for. And then up top, I've got a hair light. Obviously, the athlete's going to be a bit shorter, probably more something like this. So good key. I keep that traditional 45-45. This one I'll play with depending on the lighting that I'm looking for. And that hair light, I'll adjust brighter and darker as I need to, just make sure I capture enough separation between them in the background. For the background, I chose a bit of a pattern, bit of a texture to break it up. I also went with a negative fill on this wall because the wall is basically white and I wanted to be able to control the fill that I'm getting. So negative fill on that side with my fill light here. I do have one more light that is available to me, and what I will use this one for at some point, possibly, is a key light, because the athlete's team colors include red. So I've got red gels that I'll put in both of these verticals and light the back, or I might choose just to throw the gel in one of them and get a bit of a side light from one and a red gel from the other. Make the shadows really, really rich, deep red, while the primary, the key, will be a nice bright white shining across. I'm going for probably a mean look on that. Think Two-Face from Batman. That's kind of what I'll be going for. So if I need to, I can use this. I can run full red on the backdrop with both of them and both gels, and then I can use this as my key light if I need to. Every light is plugged into the mains, right, into a socket, except this one. That light is run off of battery power. So I think we're in a really good spot. The athlete will show up here probably about the next half hour or so, and we'll get to shooting. Good to go. I did want to mention real quick, so I have props. Not all of the athletes use the blue puck, but I have a blue puck. In fact, this athlete, I believe, uses a black hockey puck, so I'll get a black one. And then I have a spider checker for white balance. So I'll have the athlete hold this. I'll get my white balance set, whatever that is, lock it in. I can always adjust it in post, but I'd rather adjust them all in post, and we'll get into why that's important. So I've got a spider checker here, and I've got a prop, which is a puck. And then what else I do is I've got a laptop with example poses. And behind the camera is a big TV mounted on the wall. So what I do is I push my computer screen to that television and I'll say, hey, athlete, stand like this. And I put the example pose up on the screen. They look at that and then they get to stand however they stand, and I can adjust them from there. It's a great starting point anyway for me as a photographer to get a youth athlete kind of in the pose that I'm looking for. Now, let's get our settings dialed in and get to shooting. Let's talk camera and lens choice real quick. This is a Nikon Z8, but whatever camera you have, doesn't matter. I'm shooting with a nifty 50, which is a 50mm f1.8 for a full frame body, 50mm. If you're using a crop sensor body, an APS-C sensor, something like that, use a 35mm 1.8, you'll get the same results in terms of field of view equivalent. For settings, I shoot at 1/200th of a second. I wide open at f1.8, and then I take my ISO up or down to balance my exposure. I do not balance with a histogram, I balance with my eye, how it looks. I use the viewfinder, not the LCD screen in the back, unless I'm going for a really low or different angle that I just can't get my eye behind that viewfinder. So yeah, those are the settings. Athlete should be here soon. We'll get some test shots, and we'll get rolling. So that's it, that's a wrap. Whole session is done. You can see how the lights look now here at the end of the session versus how they looked at the beginning of the session. A little bit different. Like I mentioned, the athlete had red in their jersey, so I went with red in the background. Ran the same settings the whole time except the very end. I was doing a very detailed shot of the athlete's eyes through their helmet, and I have found that when I do that, I usually run manual focus at f2.8. And because I went to f2.8 from f1.8, I had to adjust my ISO up. So I ended at ISO 1600. For the whole shoot, except for that last portion that I told you about, my settings were 1/200th of a second at f1.8, which gave me an ISO of 640. And I erred on the side of slightly underexposed. I can always bring the shadows up in post, but I was exposing more for the highlights in the shot than I was good exposure across highlights and lowlights. Out of respect for the family, I chose not to use any of the footage I captured during the shoot, the video footage that I captured during the shoot. But at the end of this video, I'll go ahead and throw some of the final images up there, the final edited images, so you can get an idea of kind of how this setup worked. But if you're curious on how I got those edited images, stick around where I actually take you through the full post-shoot workflow that I have, which goes from getting the images off the card all the way through the edit into the final image. But first things first, before I do that, I've got to tear all this stuff down and get it back the way it was.